I just had a very nice conversation with a woman who lives in Roaming Shores who asked simply, David, why did my taxes double this past year? I'm very confused. And so we took a look at her property information. And I think this could be very applicable for many folks here in the county. We've seen things very similar to this happen throughout Ashtabula. So first I asked, well, how much are you paying this year in taxes? So in 2020, her tax amount was $866. Now, in 2019, her tax amount was $480. So yeah, it's almost a doubling of her taxes. And so the question then is, well, why did that happen? And she knew we had a revaluation, but she said, I've never paid this much in taxes. It makes no sense. Why would it double in 1 year? And she's absolutely right. It can be a very confusing thing. And so I said, well, let's take a look at some of your background, your history on your property, and you'll be able to see some of the reasons. So her value in 2020, this is her 2020 revaluation value. What we would believe on January 1st, 2020, her property would be worth was $77,100. And she said, that's probably about accurate. It's about right. That's what I think it could be sold for on January 1st. But still, why the doubling of taxes in just 1 year? Well, her old value, her 2019 value, was $53,600. And so that was what her value was. But our office said that back using the 2014 revaluation, she could probably sell her property for during that period. And so she still said, well, that doesn't make quite sense. If my value increased about $24,000, that's not, almost a doubling of my taxes. Why did this happen? Well, I actually took her back then and I said, well, now let's look back to your 2014 information and let's see, in 2013 information, and let's see then what our office had back in 2013. Because I had a feeling, and we've seen this throughout the county, that many of our 2020 values have actually been pre-recession values, pre-2014 revaluation values, and this was somewhat the case in this example too. So her 2013 information, her value back in 2013 was actually $74,300. So it was right about where we would say if she were to sell her property this year, where she'd be able to get in terms of the market. And what was her tax amount back then? Well, her taxes that she paid were actually $808. That's what her tax burden was back in 2013. And so, that's not too much of a difference. And that's also not too much of a value difference. What changed were two things. One, her value using the 2014 revaluation. This is really the 2014 numbers, data, and that decreased to $53,000. Now, what happened though, her district, her area, there where she lives, there was a little bit of a change, but not a tremendous amount. And so when she decreased down, her tax amount was almost cut in half because she decreased at a much higher rate than the rest of her neighbors, her taxing district. And what do actual taxes equal? Taxes actually somewhat equal, roughly, your proportion of your value to the district's value. So your value to the district. So when she went down, but her district stayed relatively the same, her value in relation to her district dropped tremendously. And so her tax burden also dropped tremendously. Now when she went back up, she was moved back in terms of value to where we believed she would sell her property back to roughly what she was back in 2013. Well, now she's taking on a higher share of the district's value in terms of her proportion in relation to her personal value, property value, to the district. And so now she's paying a higher amount. That doubling occurred because her district stayed relatively the same, so they all had the same rough proportion, but now she's increased more, just like she decreased more. And so that's just kind of a rough example of how someone can move from their old value, their old 2014 revaluation value, which is right here, to their new revaluation number, how they can move from their old taxes to their new taxes, and how really does it logically make sense? Oftentimes no. When you explain it in this portion, how she's paying her taxes based on her value in relation to the district's value, this is kind of an example of one of those cases. Now, we've got all the history, all the information. We're more than happy to walk it through with people, to explain, to share, and to help able to ask questions too.